Denise is going to talk about children's safety and well-being.
Hi, Denise Rathman, National Association of Social Workers, Iowa chapter. And child safety there's a lot of different facets to that.
Yeah.
First of all, we've got violence in the classroom, sometimes perpetrated by adults and sometimes by their own classmates who are dealing with behavioral health issues. Just recently, we had a boy here in Iowa who was tried as a youthful offender in adult court on charges of attempted murder. According to the Brady Center and the National Association of Social Workers, gun injuries sent 75,000 children and teenagers to emergency rooms over a 9-year period. That cost was at $3 billion. Bullet-inflicted injuries can be physically and emotionally devastating, especially to children and teenagers. Other types of violence include a child is abused and neglected every 47 seconds in the United States. The annual total direct and indirect cost of child maltreatment is $80.3 billion. That's in 1 year. America's most vulnerable children are those who have been placed and abused and neglected, removed from their families, and placed in foster care. And children of color are disproportionately affected by that. And then, of course, we cannot forget the children who are in our federal government's custody and being treated horrifically. So, as president, what actions would you take to ensure the safety and well-being of all the children living in the United States?
Yeah, and you hit about at least 3 different areas, right? The challenges of a child who's either abused through the system and into the foster system. The safety of children when it comes to guns, and then what's happening with the federal government ripping families apart. And that's, it's interesting in some respects. I'll step back again and then I'll go forward. Like when I was Attorney General, the state's chief law enforcement officer, but I created Children's Justice Center because we also have the criminal justice system is either going to further victimize a child or get them on the path to healing. So that was everything from drug-endangered children to how we actually do examinations of children and bringing both the social workers and law enforcement together and physical health so we're not further victimizing the child along the way. We started programs recognizing after-school providers and mentors because so often for a child, that's what's going to help him or her along the way, and that's actually part of the law enforcement issue altogether. I think that at the federal level, when we look at the services that we provide for our children, and again, the federal government can't do all of it, but it can provide some of the incentives for the states to move in better positions how we treat the victimization of children at every step. And it's state law that decides when you're going to do a family separation or what can happen, but the federal government is the backstop that can help define a lot of those areas. And I think that's another reason why that we need to be investing for the resiliency of children along the way for whatever's happened to them. That's why we're trying to take the good behavior games all across. When it comes to, it so struck me when my 6th grader, even as an example, had to learn about the first week of school, where to go in case of an active shooter. And let's hope an active shooting never happens in any of our schools. But just the trauma that's impacted by this is what you learn your first week of school. I think we can take better steps and more sensible steps when it comes to keeping our kids and our communities and our families safe. The vast majority of Democrats and Republicans and NRA members think we should have universal background checks to try to keep guns out of the wrong hands. We need to get to safe storage laws because part of what happens in a lot of our, especially in our schools, is when a youth has access to firearms. Red flag laws, the ability to remove a gun where through a court process where we see signs of challenges. And finally, places like Dick's and Walmart no longer sell assault weapons. They're not used for hunting. They're there's no reason that we continue to sell them. I think it's going to take a lot more in Washington, D.C., though, on that. And that's where folks like you and gun owners stepping up and saying, I've never met a gun owner, and I'm a hunter, that never met a gun owner that doesn't want to keep their kids and family and community safe as well. The atrocities that's been happening at the border directly with children, I think we have some bureaucracy challenges with our overall immigration system, and we have to get to a point of comprehensive immigration reform. But the biggest challenge in some respects is this president, because he is using immigration not only rip communities apart, but rip our country apart. He's taking a law that's been in place for 90 years and choosing to use that law to rip families apart. So I think the biggest thing first we can do is change the president. Second, you have a broken system in many respects when you have 450 judges for a caseload of 950,000. And you've exacerbated the challenges on the border by actually taking money away from the Northern Triangle countries as opposed to trying to provide for their economic self-sufficiency. And then I think that we need to get comprehensive immigration reform, which would include a path to citizenship for those without documentation in this country, immediate protection of the dreamers, and set some real standards along the way.